Now that Wang Chong thought about it, given Yang Zhao's personality and the fact that he had been appointed as the Chamberlain of Palace Revenues by the Sage Emperor, placing him in control over the finances of the entire empire, Yang Zhao was completely capable of intervening in this deal. How could he not be moved when he saw such a massive sum of 700 million taels of gold flying away? And how could he possibly accept it? After all, he had printed a total of 1 billion taels worth of gold yuan certificates. Worthy brother, don't look at me like that. I know that this wasn't actually the most glorious thing to do, but when this 700 million taels of gold was already in our mouth, we were forced to give it back. Those Confucians were really too unjust when it came to this matter. Under Wang Chong's stares, Yang Zhao's voice got softer and softer. Ha ha! Big brother, you're overthinking it. There's no need to worry about this matter. You did nothing wrong, and in fact made the best decision. In fact, you've made a major contribution on this matter. Wang Chong heartily laughed. Greed was greed, but it sometimes led Yang Zhao into making the most correct decision. Since Yang Zhao had exchanged 300 million taels of gold for gold yuan certificates, the losses inflicted by the Confucians in the peace negotiations with Arabia were somewhat more acceptable. Yang Zhao, through his own special method, had reduced the losses for the Great Tang. Is that right? It was Yang Zhao's turn to be taken aback. He originally believed that he had made a grievous error, but unexpectedly, Wang Chong was practically hailing him as a hero. Heh, as long as you haven't placed the gold that was exchanged for the gold yuan certificates into your own pocket, there should be no problem at all, Wang Chong indifferently said. What are you saying? How could I ever do such a thing? Yang Zhao immediately roared, though his expression was slightly unnatural. Wang Chong silently smiled. Given Yang Zhao's personality, how could he not extract a little profit? But as long as it wasn't too much, Wang Chong wouldn't expose him. Yang Zhao took a sip of his tea. After putting it down, he had a sudden thought and brought up another matter. Right, worthy brother, besides the gold yuan certificates, I have another, more personal matter that I would like to trouble you with and see if you might offer any help. Ha! If you have any problems, just tell me them all now. If I can be of any help, I will do so to the best of my abilities. Wang Chong leisurely replied. Well, it's actually not helping me. Worthy brother, you're smarter than me. This time, my younger sister entrusted me with a few words in the hopes that you could help her analyze them, Yang Zhao sternly said. Oh! Wang Chong was caught by surprise, immediately sensing that the matter Yang Zhao was talking about was different from what he had imagined and focusing his mind. In truth, it's a rather long story. You also know that my younger sister has always been infatuated with the Sage Emperor, but for some reason, His Majesty has recently been strange, completely unlike what he was before. Yang Zhao's brow creased as a look of recollection appeared in his eyes. The Sage Emperor? Wang Chong's body trembled in shock. He had never expected that the second matter Yang Zhao had come to find him for was related to the Sage Emperor. Everyone knows how much the Sage Emperor favors my younger sister. For the sake of bringing her into the palace, he didn't mind opposing almost the entire court. But recently, His Majesty has decreased the frequency of his visits to Yuzhen Palace, and each visit is very short, not even enough time to get the seat warm. There are times when His Majesty will be happily chatting away with Her Majesty, and then a moment later he will have left without any warning or reason. And even now, when my younger sister has gone of her own volition to see His Majesty, the Sage Emperor will use various reasons to refuse her. Such a thing has never happened before. Yang Zhao appeared extremely worried as he spoke. His glory and wealth, as well as his current post as Chamberlain of Palace Revenues, were all due to his younger sister, Consort Taishan. If she fell out of favor, everything he had would be like dust. This was Yang Zhao's deepest fear, far surpassing his unease over the gold yuan certificates. Buzz! Yang Zhao himself hadn't understood what was going on, but Wang Chong was already feeling wary, an ill foreboding on his mind. I'm now rather worried that my little sister has lost the Sage Emperor's favor. Worthy brother, of all the people around your foolish brother, you are the one who notices the most. Last time, you also wrote 2 poems that were of much delight for my sister. Help me think and understand what's going on. My younger sister and I have pondered the matter for a long while, but we still don't understand. Was it something that we did wrong? Or perhaps something that incurred His Majesty's displeasure? Xianxia grew more uneasy the more he said. The gold yuan certificates were a temporary threat to him, but Consort Taijian's loss of favor threatened his very foundation. Wang Chong said nothing as countless thoughts raged in his mind. Xianxia and Consort Taijian had little idea of the truth and believed that this was a problem of favor. But Wang Chong knew that nothing could be more incorrect. Wang Chong suppressed his worries and sternly asked, "Big brother, besides the number of meetings with the Sage Emperor and his refusing to meet Consort Taijian, has Her Majesty told you anything else?" This? Her Majesty didn't say anything else, only that she clearly sensed that His Majesty did not favor her as much as before. In addition, the moment His Majesty leaves court, he locks himself up in his own room, and he spends more and more time within, not allowing anyone to get close. Right? There was one time when Her Majesty went to pay her respects and found the Sage Emperor muttering to himself in his room. Her Majesty was planning to stay and listen, but Gao Lisher quickly came out and advised her to leave. Right now, other than eunuch Gao, no one is allowed to approach the Sage Emperor. What's wrong? Worthy brother, have you noticed something? Xianxia raised his head in confusion. Wang Chong said nothing, but countless thoughts were flying through his mind. Ever since his first meeting with the Sage Emperor, besides searching for the schemer behind the scenes, Wang Chong had also been constantly observing the Sage Emperor's condition. After all, the Sage Emperor was the supporting pillar of the empire. But from what he had observed, other than a few times where his aura was in slight disorder, the Sage Emperor was basically normal. At the very least, the Sage Emperor had managed to last until the end for the last few court sessions with no abnormalities. As for what happened after morning court, Wang Chong couldn't see nor had ever tried to conjecture. Wang Chong had always believed that even if the Sage Emperor's condition was poor, it was at least better than it had been in his last life. But now that he heard Xianxia's words, his heart sank as he realized just how bad the situation was. If this was how the Sage Emperor was after every court session, then his true condition was far worse than Wang Chong had predicted. Worthy brother. At this moment, a call at his ear awakened Wang Chong from his stupor. Blinking, Wang Chong saw that Xianxia was staring at him with a furrowed brow and worried face. Worthy brother, are you okay? Heh, I'm fine. Wang Chong smiled and shook his head. Xianxia did not press any further. Worthy brother, you're smarter than I am. Do you think His Majesty likes new things and has started to tire of my younger sister? Relax. Such a thing won't happen. Wang Chong smiled reassuringly. His Majesty's affection for Her Majesty surpasses all. No one could ever surpass her in His Majesty's heart. Oh! Xianxia felt dubious about this statement. He should have never asked Wang Chong about this matter involving the harem, but Wang Chong had always given the impression of someone who was supremely intelligent, and Xianxia had unconsciously begun to trust in him. Moreover, Wang Chong's existence truly was like the noon sun at this time. If even you say this, then it should be true. Could it really be something else? Xianxia quickly took his leave. As Wang Chong watched him leave, a faint hint of concern appeared in his eyes. The next day, at morning court, everything was as normal. Wang Chong stood at the back and scrutinized the Sage Emperor. He was the same as ever, bright, majestic, noble, and upright. Yet Wang Chong felt intensely uneasy. Swoosh! While Wang Chong was still thinking and the court was still debating, the Sage Emperor suddenly grimaced and stood up. Without a word, he turned and left, soon vanishing from the upper reaches of the hall. Today's morning court session will end here for the day. The remaining matters will be presided over by the Prime Minister. Gao Lisher suddenly stepped forward, waving his horsetail whisk as he spoke. Buzz! Wang Chong's body quivered as he raised his head. There was some turmoil in the hall, but after a few moments, all returned to normal. Respectfully sending off His Divine Majesty, all the officials bowed, but not a single person found this strange or unusual. Wang Chong's heart immediately sank. You've already seen it. Once the court session was over, King Song and Wang Chong walked down the white jade stairs together. This has actually happened quite a few times. At the start, everyone panicked, but we gradually got used to it. Moreover, the Great Tang has thrived for so many years and has so many capable officials and generals that even with the Prime Minister presiding, many matters can still be resolved. This, together with the supervision of the imperial censors, means that there will not be any major errors. It is just that the decisions will have to be handed to His Majesty later on for review. So the decision on Narration was also made when the Prime Minister was presiding? Wang Chong asked. King Song sighed and nodded. Side by side, the two left the imperial palace. As if the first incident had been some sort of signal, the sage emperor began to retire from court earlier and earlier. On the first day, he had only withdrawn an hour early, but by the end, it wasn't even 5 minutes until the sage emperor gave his orders to Gao Lisher and withdrew. All this made Wang Chong more and more uneasy. In the early morning, a ray of sunlight peeked in through the study window. A young figure was seated in front of a table, constantly flipping through pages. The oil lantern next to him had long ago burnt out, and there were thick piles of books and ancient texts surrounding him. Your Highness, complying with the fifth prince's order, we brought over all the related records in the palace that we could obtain. We also requested to borrow records from all the consorts, concubines, and princesses of the palace. Please see if the information desired by Your Highness lies within. In front of Wang Chong was a rather ugly middle-aged eunuch, clearly identifiable by the fifth prince's token tied to his waist. It was none other than the future number 1 treacherous eunuch, Li Jingzhong. In investigating the sage emperor's condition, Wang Chong needed all the information available regarding the divine martial realm. In this aspect, what was available to the public was far inferior to what was available to the imperial palace. For this reason, Wang Chong had requested the assistance of fifth prince Li Heng. Li Heng had always taken Wang Chong's request seriously, so he had gotten his hands on much information as he could. He had even dispatched Li Jingzhong to attend to Wang Chong. I understand. I will call you if I need anything, Wang Chong indifferently said. In addition, His Highness has asked that if you discover anything or make any progress, he would like to be informed as quickly as possible. His Highness has always been an extremely filial son and is extremely concerned about His Divine Majesty. Li Jingzhong bowed to Wang Chong after saying this and quickly withdrew from the room. Once Li Jingzhong was gone, leaving Wang Chong alone in the study, Wang Chong put down the book in his hands, looked out the window, and deeply sighed. Given Wang Chong's present status and the assistance of the fifth prince, Wang Chong had far more books and texts available to him than most people in the world. Yet even after a sleepless night of browsing through countless texts, he had come away with nothing. The only information he had found regarding the divine martial realm was that trying to break into this realm was fraught with danger. Once begun, one could not be interrupted midway. But there had been nothing saying that failure to reach the divine martial realm would result in cultivation defect and constant decline of one's martial arts. Now that he thought about it, in his last life, everything he knew regarding the divine martial realm and the sage emperor had come from legends and speculation. In the entire world, very few people had ever been able to touch the subtle realm or learn of its existence. Even the mighty imperial great generals knew almost nothing about it. And this wasn't even considering the fact that the divine martial realm was above the subtle realm. If not for the sage emperor, many people would have probably gone their entire lives unaware of the existence of this realm. Wang Chong had a career marked by constant victory, and he was hailed as the war god of the Great Tang's new generation. Even Qutayba had died at his hands, and countless great generals would want to flee upon seeing him. However, the more he investigated and understood the divine martial realm, the more Wang Chong felt that there was an enormous chasm between him and the sage emperor. Even the sage emperor, who was greatly weakened after failing to reach the divine martial realm, still possessed an unfathomable cultivation level. Even at Wang Chong's current level of cultivation, he still could not fathom just how powerful the strength of the divine martial realm was. But when he thought about the sage emperor's condition as relayed to him by Yang Zhao and the chaos in the central plains once the sage emperor passed, Wang Chong felt like he needed to do something. Even if he had only a 1 in 10,000 chance, he still had to try and stop this all from happening. As Wang Chong continued to gather up texts and search for information on the divine martial realm, during the court session of the next day, a surprising development took place. Acceding to the will of the heavens, the emperor declares, the first prince, Li Ying as the eldest son, is polite and modest to the extreme, tolerant and courteous. To serve as an example to the princes, we have decided to temporarily have First Prince Li Ying preside over court, deciding all matters jointly with the Prime Minister and King Song. Thus is the emperor's will. The massive dragon throne in the upper reaches of the hall was empty, the sage emperor nowhere to be seen. However, the director of the inner court, Gao Lisher, had stepped forward, his whisk in one hand and a divine decree in the other, and loudly declared these words to the gathered officials. Boom! Gao Lisher's voice was like a heavy weight being thrown into the court, causing a massive earthquake. The sage emperor had reigned for so many years, but he had never once failed to attend morning court, much less made anyone a regent. Moreover, according to the customs of the Great Tang, a regent would only appear when the emperor was preparing to abdicate so as to prepare for the ascendancy of the future heir apparent. But the emperor was still in his prime and possessed peerless cultivation. This abrupt order left everyone uneasy. Eunuch Gao, just what has happened? Where is His Majesty? Why can we not see His Majesty? Right? What's wrong with His Majesty? Why is the first prince temporarily presiding over the court? A pile of officials immediately stepped forward, their voices panicked and worried. Eunuch Gao, just what has happened to His Majesty? Wang Chong suddenly said. While investigating what happened after a failure to reach the divine martial realm, he had never expected that the sage emperor would so quickly withdraw from the imperial court, concealing himself behind the curtain and allowing the first prince to stand in for him. Wang Chong had an extremely ill foreboding, sensing that the sage emperor's condition was even worse than he had imagined. Buzz! The moment Wang Chong spoke, the entire imperial court instantly fell silent. Countless officials began to look back and forth between Wang Chong and Gao Lisher. As the Great Tang's king of foreign lands and after that string of incidents, Wang Chong had successfully branded his unyielding and determined attitude into the minds of the court officials. Wang Chong now possessed unusual weight in the imperial court, becoming a leader of the court similar to King Song. Gao Lisher's brow creased, and as he waved his horsetail whisk and prepared to speak, another voice resounded through the hall. I will answer this question for you. This sudden voice immediately caught the attention of all the officials. Even Gao Lisher turned in the direction of this voice. At the entrance to Taihe Palace stood a golden figure, tall, slender, and majestic, wearing a four-clawed dragon robe. He stepped over the threshold and entered the hall. The first prince. Wang Chong slightly grimaced at the sight of this figure, a thought flitting through his mind. First Prince Li Ying had a disdainful look in his eyes, and he slowly stalked forward like a tiger or dragon. Upon seeing him, all the officials hurriedly lowered their heads and bowed. Your Highness! Your Highness! Li Ying said nothing, and he held his head high and lightly waved his hand to indicate that all the officials should rise. My lords, there is no need to be so polite. Imperial Father has recently felt unwell. In addition, everyone knows that Imperial Father's martial prowess is unrivaled in the world. Imperial Father must be sensing another breakthrough and so has decided to seclude himself, making this Li Ying a regent to preside over the court. Imperial Uncle, Lord Prime Minister, in the future, I will have to trouble you for your assistance, Li Ying said, his gaze turning to the Prime Minister and King Song. Your Highness is too polite. Prime Minister Li Linfu stroked his beard and chuckled. King Song, on the other hand, felt a chill in his heart and repeatedly said, I would not dare. My lords, I will have to rely on your instruction in the future. Li Ying scanned the rest of the officials in the hall. We would not dare. The first prince is wise and heroic. His Majesty's decision cannot be wrong. How could you possibly need our instruction? The officials hurriedly lowered their heads. According to the custom of previous dynasties, the moment the first prince was made regent and allowed to preside over the court, this meant that the first prince was highly likely to become the heir apparent, the next sage emperor of the Great Tang. At this moment, all the officials had nothing but reverence in their hearts. The first prince held his hands behind his back and kept his head raised as he slowly walked toward the dragon throne, his demeanor like that of a tiger or dragon. At this moment, the first prince was bursting with energy, exuding an aura that regarded the whole world with disdain. But as he passed by Wang Chong, the first prince paused for a moment. "Heh! King of foreign lands, we meet again. Bzzz." This minor action immediately drew the attention of the officials. All eyes in the court gathered on the two of them. One was the sage emperor's eldest son, the future heir apparent, while the other was king of foreign lands, fresh off a victory on the battlefield and possessing enormous influence in the court. The mood immediately turned strange. And before this, there had already been a rumor that the first prince had tried to recruit Wang Chong but had apparently been refused. "First prince is too polite," Wang Chong indifferently said. At this time, he was the only person able to maintain a calm and confident composure. Wang Chong held his hands behind his back, fearless even in front of the first prince. "It is truly a pity. On that day in front of the palace gate, you should not have refused me," said a soft whisper in his ear. Shocked, Wang Chong noticed that the first prince was smirking at him, his lips softly moving but making no noise. It seemed like he was using a secret messaging skill. At the same time, the distant King Qi shifted as if he heard something, and then a smug smile appeared on his face. Before Wang Chong could reply, the first prince grinned and continued onward. Meanwhile, King Qi gave a sinister smile and used a secret messaging skill so that his voice could resound in Wang Chong's mind. "Foul brat. In the end, it was still your Wang clan that lost." He had suffered several setbacks at the hands of Wang Chong and the Wang clan, and this time, the sage emperor had even appointed King Song to assist the regent first prince. But not him, leaving King Qi infuriated. But in the end, Wang Chong and the Wang clan had still lost. He had always been close to the first prince, and so once the first prince ascended the throne, the Wang clan would undoubtedly fall out of favor. Despite all the effort Wang Chong had put in, he would still lose. Wang Chong condensed his energy and replied with a faint smile on his lips. "Heh! Your Highness is laughing too early. You!" King Qi was enraged, but by this time, the first prince had reached the raised platform and seated himself on the sage emperor's dragon throne. He did not dare to speak any more at this time. Wang Chong grinned and ceased quarreling with King Qi. The first prince would not be able to sit on the emperor's throne. Of this, Wang Chong was absolutely confident. The first prince and King Qi were counting their chickens before they had hatched. Once the court session was over, Xianxia Jianxiong, King Song, Wang Chong, and Wang Zhen squeezed themselves into a large carriage. Xianxia Jianxiong was the first to speak, his brow furrowed in worry and his head slightly lowered. "Wang Chong, the situation is bad. His Majesty has retired to the palace, and we can't get close unless he summons us for an audience. And with the first prince presiding over the country, all power is in the hands of the first prince, Li Linfu and King Song is the only person on our side with any decision-making power. Moreover, the first prince has never been very close to us. Now that His Majesty has placed him in charge of the country, there's a 50% chance that he will be made the future sovereign. This is extremely ill news for us." When Xianxia Jianxiong had still been Annan Protector General, the first prince had tried to recruit him, but Xianxia Jianxiong had refused him. As for Wang Chong and King Song, they had also had their differences with the first prince, so none of the three had much of a relationship with him. The news that the first prince was presiding over the empire could definitely not be considered good news. Once the first prince assumed the throne, the three would be put in an even worse situation. Xianxia Jianxiong's worries were completely understandable. Public is public and private is private. Whether it's the first prince or any other prince who assumes the throne, as long as we carry out and remain loyal to our duties, not even the first prince can mess around too much. At this stage in the empire's development, the system of laws has been passed down for centuries. This is not something that the first prince alone can break. If the Son of Heaven commits a crime, he will be punished the same as a commoner. Not even the sovereign of a country can do whatever he wishes, King Song soothed. Although the sage emperor's making the first prince the regent caught him by surprise, King Song had always been an honorable and open person. As long as he hadn't done anything wrong, he feared nothing. A voice rang out through the carriage. "My lords, there is no need to worry. The one to inherit the throne of the sage emperor in the future will never be the first prince. Bzzz." At these words, King Song, Xianxia Jianxiong, and Wang Zhen all turned in surprise to Wang Chong. In this large carriage, 2 kings, the minister of war, and a lower rank 1 official were seated, all of them of illustrious and influential status. If Wang Chong's words were to get out, it would set off a tempest in the imperial court. The first prince would also begin to regard this group as a thorn in his side that he would spare no effort to exterminate. "Chong-er, what nonsense are you saying? This matter is not something that you can casually mouth off about." Wang Zhen could not restrain himself, straightening his back as he harshly rebuked Wang Chong. But Wang Chong waved his hand and nonchalantly said, "Big uncle, be at ease. I know what I am saying." His words just now had almost caused the hearts of the other 3 to leap out of their throats. But Wang Chong knew the course of history and was absolutely certain that the first prince would never be able to sit upon the emperor's throne. "Wang Chong, how can you be so sure?" King Song and Xianxia Jianxiong glanced at each other in dismay. Wang Chong had never done anything without purpose. If he dared to say such a thing, he had definitely done so because he had something to back his words up with. But the 2 of them couldn't understand where Wang Chong's confidence had come from. This did not seem like speculation, but complete confidence that the first prince would never make it. The sage emperor's throne has always been occupied by the virtuous. Besides seniority, one must also consider a person's character and personality. The first prince's patience and skill are quite decent, but his personality is lacking. Moreover, the throne of the emperor is tied to the lives of all the people in the empire. The sage emperor has always been wise and would never decide on a successor merely through age. In addition, if the sage emperor wanted the first prince to inherit the throne, he would have made him heir apparent long ago and not waited until now. Wang Chong confidently said. The 3 others in the carriage exchanged speechless looks. Wang Chong's argument was simple and easy to understand, and it was something that all 3 of them already knew. The imperial palace appeared calm on the surface, but underneath, it was rife with conflict. The reason was very simple. The sage emperor had yet to decide on the heir apparent. Although the first prince was the eldest son, making him the logical successor, another day in which the sage emperor did not make his decision was another day of this matter being kept in suspense. "Let's not talk about this anymore. Your Highness, I have an important matter to ask you about." Wang Chong quickly changed the topic. "Your Highness, the imperial court granted me the minor title of advisor-in-waiting, but it's precisely because this is not an important position that I have the freedom to choose. Moreover, as a king of the Great Tang but also not one of the core government officials, upon consideration by the court, I can be exempted from attending the morning court sessions. With the sage emperor not present, you are the only person in the court who can restrain the first prince and prime minister Li Linfu. I do not intend to attend court sessions for some time. Although I can't compare to the first prince and Lord Prime Minister when it comes to decision-making power, and we won't be able to get anything on our side passed with the 2 of them here, I can still think of ways to stop them if they try to weaken the Bureau of Military Personnel's authority or pass proposals that disadvantage the military." King Song nodded, not prying any further into Wang Chong's affairs. The greatest advantage of the sage emperor's bestowing such authority on King Song was that he could restrain the Confucians and prevent them from further weakening the militarists. "Wang Chong, do you have some sort of plan?" Xianxia Jianxiong said. Wang Chong always did things with a goal in mind, and though this did not seem apparent at first, reality always proved him to be correct. No one had cared about Lion City or Wang Chong's fief in Wuxiang, but in the end, these places had both ended up playing extremely influential roles, Lion City even saving the 100,000 soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army. "I do have some ideas, but now is not the time to talk about them," Wang Chong calmly said, the thought of Li Junxian and the mysterious Confucian sect flitting through his mind. "Hua." As the four conversed, a clamor of yelling and cheering came from outside. The four of them immediately moved to the curtains and saw that their carriage had come to the illustrious Blue Dragon Street of the capital. Crowds had gathered at the most thriving spot of Blue Dragon Street and were apparently discussing something. One could see that this crowd was gathered around several notices posted on the wall. King Song tapped the walls of the carriage and ordered, "Someone, tell me what's going on outside." "Yes, Your Highness." A respectful voice came from outside, and a few moments later, a figure returned after going to see what was happening. "Your Highness, the people of the Confucian School have posted an announcement on Blue Dragon Street. The announcement says that with the world at peace, now is the time to exchange weapons for jade and silk, the era of the harmonious world. The Confucians' efforts to propagate their teachings have also experienced great progress. In the lands of the Eastern and Western Turks, they have established 800 schools, which have taken more than 27,000 students to learn the Confucian culture and the language of the Great Tang. 400 schools have been established in Yusang with 8,000 to 9,000 students, and even some adult shepherds have accepted the teachings of the Great Tang. 200 schools have been established in Mengxizhou with 6,000 to 7,000 students, 300 in Goguryeo with 7,000 some students, and Arabia has the most, with 1,000 schools teaching more than 70,000 students. All the foreigners and foes in the entire universe have put down their preconceived notions and have been attracted to the culture of the Great Tang. If things continue this way, as long as everyone upholds benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust, all wars in the world will cease and the people will be free from the turmoil of battle. Buzz. As King Song and Zhangqiu Jianxiong digested these words, Wang Chong's pupils constricted, his face paling. Swish! Before the others had time to react, Wang Chong had flown out of the carriage. "King Song, Lord Zhangqiu, Big Uncle, I have some matters to attend to. Let us talk more next time." His voice resounded through the carriage. Wang Chong paused in front of the Confucian School's announcement for a few moments, and then he vanished. In the Wang family residence, Wang Chong waited with his hands held behind his back, his robes flapping in the wind. A few moments later, Old Eagle, Zhang Ke, Su Kai, and Cheng Sanyuan had gathered at Wang Chong's side. "My lord, we've investigated and found these announcements posted on Blue Dragon Street, Vermilion Bird Street, White Tiger Street, and almost every other major thoroughfare of the capital." Cheng Sanyuan gasped for air. He was the first to arrive, and after receiving Wang Chong's order, he had rushed off to gather information. Hidden Dragon Street, Ghost Dragon Street, Spring Radiant Street, and Autumn Rain Street, the places often frequented by the scions of the great clans, also have these notices, Su Kai added. "Upon receiving the news, I immediately dispatched all my men. I've already learned that the Confucian announcement can be found in every region of the city. My lord, it seems like these people are using their momentum to frantically build support." The third to speak was Old Eagle, and he looked at Wang Chong with an extremely grave expression. Old Eagle had accompanied Wang Chong when he had gone to see the leader of the Confucian sect at Drunken Moon Pavilion. Thus, when he learned of this Confucian campaign, he immediately smelled a scheme. "My lord, I sense that the Confucian school has come prepared. Posting these notices throughout the city might only be the beginning. They might be doing something else very soon." Zhang Ke bowed and said, "My lord, the information I've obtained is about the same as my master's. But there is something a little different from what master reported. Our people have discovered that many old Confucians have begun lecturing on the ideas of benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, peace is to be cherished, and opposition to war in the tea houses and restaurants of the capital. While speaking, they use the relationships the Great Tang has with the surrounding countries to draw in many people. Posting announcements, lecturing." Wang Chong stood in the garden of the Wang family, his eyes closed, countless thoughts running through his mind. The Confucian school, or the Confucian sect, to be more precise, really was beginning to campaign for support of its ideals. "My lord, what do we do? The Confucian school has come with a furious momentum, and their ultimate target might be us." Zhang Ke worriedly looked at Wang Chong. These words caused everyone to turn their attention to Wang Chong. No matter what the Confucian school did, in the end, it would definitely be aiming at the militarists. And Wang Chong, as a leader of the militarists, was bound to be one of their targets. "Don't act recklessly," Wang Chong sternly said, his eyes still closed and his expression ice-cold. "The Confucians are only announcing their achievements on the borders. Even without them, this is still something we would have to do. They still haven't revealed their goals or taken any unusual actions, so it's not convenient for us to do anything right now." Building schools to teach the Tang language was a project that Wang Chong had already started in Karasan. It was just that the Confucians had now taken over this role. In this aspect, the two sides actually shared the same opinion. The Confucians must have a goal in beating their drums so vigorously, but no matter what they're planning, they can't touch me for now. Their goal might be elsewhere. "Su Kai, write a letter for me to Li Sai and Su Hanshan. Tell them that if anything strange happens, they must endure. They cannot be the first to issue a challenge and give the adversary any sort of pretext." He suddenly thought back to Li Juanxian's parting words at Drunken Moon Pavilion. "Yes, my lord." Su Kai swiftly left to carry out the order. Wang Chong had actually already sent quite a few letters to the northwest, but Su Kai had never questioned Wang Chong's orders. Flap, flap. However, Su Kai had only taken a few steps when a flapping of wings came from overhead. Looking up, he saw a hawk descending from the sky, with an extremely striking green bracelet around its right claw. "My lord, a letter from the northwest," Cheng Sanyuan sternly said. Wang Chong's subordinates in different regions would send messages with different symbols. This allowed one to know where a letter was coming from without needing to read the letter. The hawk landed on Old Eagle's shoulder. Old Eagle opened the letter, glanced at it, and immediately paled. Old Eagle quickly strode over and whispered into Wang Chong's ear, "My lord, it's bad. Li Sai and Su Hanshan have sent a letter saying that there's been an incident in the army." Boom! Shockwaves resounded through Wang Chong's mind, and he took the letter from Old Eagle with a heavy heart. Su Hanshan had written the letter, and it confirmed all of Wang Chong's unease and speculations. After Wang Chong left, the three Confucian experts assumed authority over the army. Moreover, Wang Chong's de facto demotion and his escort away by the Bureau of Rights and the Golden Guards had infuriated the Chishi Protectorate Army and the mercenaries. The Confucians' decision to retreat from Karasan and betray the promise made to the Sasana dynasty and the other rebel armies had only added to the pile of discontents. And after many more Confucian experts arrived to oversee the army and restrict them, the army's discontent reached its peak. Even though Wang Chong had sent several letters to have Su Hanshan and Li Sai restrain the soldiers, there were some things that even the two of them could not control. At the start, it was only one or two people, but as more and more people began to talk, the three Confucian commanders were eventually forced to send down an order strictly forbidding any talk of Karasan, with those who disobeyed to be dealt with by military law. Soon after, 3 soldiers were found talking about what had happened at Karasan and were imprisoned by the Confucian supervisors. As more and more people learned the news, they began to talk openly about it. The 3 Confucian commanders ordered that all these people should be arrested, and by the time Su Hanshan and Li Sai found out, it was already too late. This was because the bandits Su Hanshan had trained and Li Sai's Wuxian cavalry had been in the group arrested. The former had irascible temperaments that were easily angered, while the latter had lost many people in the 2 major battles and were incredibly dissatisfied to see all they had worked for be turned to naught, and they were furthermore indignant at the injustice inflicted upon Wang Chong. It was these traits that caused these 2 groups to be arrested by the Confucians. Although the 2 had received Wang Chong's requests to fully restrain the army, at a time like this, as commanding officers, they could only participate in the resistance against the 3 Confucian commanders to protect their subordinates. Before straightening their backs and heading out, the 2 had written this letter to Wang Chong explaining the entire situation. In other words, Su Hanshan and Li Sai have both been imprisoned by now. Wang Chong grimaced as he finished reading the letter. The plans of men were no match for the plans of heaven. Even though he had done his utmost to try and stop it, his efforts had still come too late. Su Hanshan and Li Sai were both core subordinates for Wang Chong and had fought with their lives on the line together with Wang Chong. Su Hanshan had fought together with him in 2 major wars while Li Sai had served at his side even earlier, since the southwest. Wang Chong could not stand by and watch as these two suffered misfortune. And it was precisely for these reasons that Wang Chong understood why his 2 subordinates, though clearly understanding that their actions were unwise, still stood up against the 3 Confucian commanders after their soldiers were arrested. All of this seemed very normal, but Wang Chong could smell the thick scent of a scheme. Old Eagle, the Bureau of Military Personnel, has already agreed to the requests for transfer that I had Su Hanshan and Li Sai submit. So why are the 2 of them still there? Wang Chong suddenly said. Since his meeting with Li Junxian, Wang Chong had had Su Hanshan and Li Sai submit requests of transfer to move from the border back to the interior. Actually, any place would do, whether it was the capital, the southwest, Longxi, or even Yuzhou to the northeast. With Wang Chong's current connections in the army, none of this was a problem. Moreover, the special circumstances caused by the conflict between the militarists and Confucians meant that the requests for transfer were easily approved. Wang Chong had even gotten the documents through Xianxia Jianxiong himself. Old Eagle lowered his head and sternly said, "Not long ago, the 2 sent a letter saying that they really had done as my lord requested, but all the documents, including the order from the Bureau of Military Personnel, are being held up by the 3 Confucian commanders. The 3 of them are keeping Su Hanshan and Li Sai on the basis that they lack capable officers." Bastard! Wang Chong's expression sank and his body began to exude a chilling aura. What had been just a hunch was now a certainty. While the events in the northwest appeared to be a coincidence, they were actually all planned out by someone. Li Junxian. Wang Chong suddenly recalled that white-robed young Confucian in Drunken Moon Pavilion. The battle between this pair had started far earlier than he had imagined. Get in touch with Minister of War Xianxia Jianxiong and tell him to immediately have the Bureau of Military Personnel intervene in this affair. In addition, write 2 letters for me, one to the Anxi Protectorate and the other to Longxi. Request Gao Xianji, Feng Changqing, and Big Dipper Great General Geshuhan to join with me to apply pressure. In addition, if possible, have Biting Protector General and Sishun apply pressure as well. All the great generals are in the same boat now, so and Sishun should understand what the right decision is. I'd like to see just who would dare to act recklessly under the combined pressure of 3 great generals and the Bureau of Military Personnel. Wang Chong's expression was frigid. In addition, Zhang Ke, take my token and go to the Kingsong residence. With both my and Kingsong's token, ride non-stop for Qixi. The imperial court is one thing, but I'd like to see if they would dare to make an enemy of all the protector generals and great generals and the entire Bureau of Military Personnel. 3 great generals, 2 kings, and the Minister of War was an unimaginably immense power, enough to inspire dread and reverence in anyone. Yes, my lord. Old Eagle and Zhang Ke both left. Chang Sanyuan, immediately get in touch with Minister of War Xianxia Jianxiong. I need all the information on the 3 Confucian commanders as quickly as possible, Wang Chong sternly said. Chang Sanyuan bowed and hurriedly said, "This subordinate will deliver this order. Su Kai, it's not right to leave a visitor without a gift. Prepare a memorial to the court. I want everything those 3 Confucian commanders have done announced to the entire imperial court." Wang Chong turned to the imperial palace, a dazzling light in his eyes. Su Kai was elated to hear these words and lowered his head. This subordinate will deliver this order. Boom! Several hours later, when Wang Chong's memorial was delivered to court and into the ears of the assembled officials, it immediately unleashed a storm in the capital. Wang Chong was illustrious and renowned, hailed as the war god of the new generation, and he wielded enormous influence in society. Whether it was due to the fact that he was the son of heaven's disciple, his achievements in the Northwest, or his status as the king of foreign lands, Wang Chong's every word and movement possessed great weight. This was actually the first time Wang Chong had submitted a formal memorial of censure in his capacity as king of foreign lands. Moreover, his target was the 3 newly appointed Confucian commanders of the Qixi Protectorate Army. Once the incident was exposed, it immediately sent shockwaves through society. Flap flap. As Wang Chong's memorial was making waves in the capital of the empire, countless birds flew into the sky. In the darkness, a white pigeon flew into a remote and secluded bamboo garden in the northwest part of the capital. A candle was lit in this garden, and behind this candle, a white-robed Confucian was gracefully studying some ancient text. "Young master, what do we do?" The other side counterattacked too quickly. "We only just seized his subordinates in the northwest, but he's already begun to take action, reporting the matter to the imperial court. It doesn't seem like we're much of a match for him within the army." A voice came out of the darkness, from a bowing, black-robed elder behind Li Junxian. On his right wrist was a black symbol indicating that he was an expert of the Confucian sect. Wang Chong's counterattack had been too swift and too fierce. Their original plan had been to use Wang Chong's subordinates in the northwest to threaten him and make him have second thoughts about doing anything. At the very least, if he was looking to aid the northwest, he wouldn't have the attention to do anything else. But they had not expected that Wang Chong's reaction would be so intense, that he would be so unyielding and focused that they were the ones caught off guard. "Young master, we've also heard from our men in the Bureau of Military Personnel that Xianxia Jianxiong has already drafted a military order pressuring the 3 experts of our sect in the northwest." Xianxia Jianxiong could not have learned of this news so quickly. The king of foreign lands must have informed him. Even though we have men in the Bureau of Military Personnel, there are undoubtedly measures being implemented in other areas. We are now the ones in a disadvantageous position. Young master, should we inform Wen Changqing, Tang Chengyu, and Li Fanming to release the king of foreign lands' 2 subordinates and all the other imprisoned soldiers? Another voice came from the side, but in the dim light of the candle, one could see that the figure outlined was that of what appeared to be a young woman of 16 or 17. This girl was wearing a simple white cloth robe, and her hair was black like ink, cascading down her head, kept in place only by a single unadorned wooden hairpin. She gave off a tranquil and serene aura, like that of an orchid. But the most striking trait about her was the boundless energy within her body. If one looked carefully, one would notice that this girl was barefoot and hovering several inches off the ground. Her toes were smooth and exquisite, as if they had been carved from jade. They even seemed to faintly glow in the candlelight. Li Junxian said nothing, only slowly raised his eyes from the ancient scroll. The faint candlelight threw out a long and slender shadow against the wall, imbuing him with a sense of deepness and calmness. He was like an ancient well, a deep pool, and nothing would ever be able to stir any ripples in his mind. The place was quiet. The elder of the Confucian sect and the white-clothed girl silently watched Li Junxian, waiting for his answer. Wen Changqing, Tang Qingyu, and Li Fanming were the 3 nails that the Confucian school had managed with great difficulty to place in the army. Given Wang Chong's status, now that he had reported this matter to the court, there was a 60 to 70% chance that he could actually topple those 3. More importantly, Wang Chong could use them to attack the Confucian school. This was because the information on Wen Changqing, Tang Chengyu, and Li Fanming was all available to be investigated. "There's no need," Li Junxian lightly said, putting down the ancient scroll and slowly standing up. "This battle has only just begun. Have Tang Qingyu and the others delay while we try to respond to the Bureau of Military Personnel. Keep his subordinates imprisoned for now. As for the king of foreign lands, I will deal with him, making him incapable of doing anything to those 3 for a while." In the northwest, they had not issued their challenge first. Rather, it had been Wang Chong's subordinates who had first defied military orders. Even if Wang Chong informed the imperial court, he could only save his subordinates and not actually do anything to the 3 Confucian commanders. Li Junxian had already carefully considered every detail of this plan. Moreover, his goal had never been to deal with Wang Chong's subordinates. "Elder Song, have the preparations for that other matter been completed?" Li Junxian suddenly said. "Young master, be at ease. Everything is ready. All we need is young master's order," Elder Song said. "Then begin." Wang Chong, King Song, Xianxia Jianxiong, Wang Zhen, Lu Ting, Elder Yi, and Elder Zhao had all gathered in the King Song residence. Even Wang Chong's little uncle Wang Mi was present, called back from Heaven Pillar Mountain on the outskirts of the capital. Wang Chong, King Song, and Xianxia Jianxiong sat side by side while the others were seated in a circle down below. Gathered here was one of the most powerful factions of the court. The Wang family residence was not secretive enough, and the King of Foreign Lands residence was still being constructed and would not be ready for 2 or 3 months. Thus, Wang Chong had borrowed King Song's residence to gather everyone. King Song scanned the room and suddenly said, "Wang Chong, everyone is here. Give everyone a summary of the information that you've recently gathered." Wang Chong proceeded to relay everything he had turned up in his investigations ever since his return to the capital, including how he had used Zhang Shogui's incident to find Li Junxian. The only thing he concealed was the matter of the Sage Emperor. The Sage Emperor was the backbone of the empire, the primary strength stabilizing the hearts of the people. If the Sage Emperor's condition were made known, it would probably cause panic and turmoil throughout society. The room was quiet as everyone seriously listened to Wang Chong's words. Everyone had seen what Wang Chong had done in the imperial court. But no one had imagined that while everyone was still immersed in the chaos, Wang Chong had already begun to investigate the main schemer behind the curtains. Truly incredible. So you mean to say that the events taking place inside and outside the court have all been the work of one young man? Elder Yi incredulously muttered. Old fellows like them had already withdrawn from the core of the empire, and so they only roughly understood what was going on in the imperial court, not that it had been so complicated. And at this moment, everyone understood exactly what Elder Yi was feeling. Who could have imagined that the Grand Preceptor, King Qi, and Prime Minister, all extremely important officials, were all obeying a young man of 26 or 27? It sounded like a fairy tale. If it hadn't been Wang Chong making this claim, none of them would have believed it. But Wang Chong would never make such outlandish claims without reason. As long as he was speaking seriously, even if he said that the sun was going to rise from the west, they would probably believe him. This is also something I must speak to all of you about. A single young man of 26 or 27 could never possess such abilities that he could order around the Grand Preceptor and King Qi. This is particularly the case for King Qi, who has always been conceited and unwilling to serve others. This can only be possible with the support of some enormously powerful faction. I hope that everyone can assist me with this. All of you are my seniors and have a wide array of experiences. Perhaps you might know something about the Confucian sect's backing and origin. Wang Chong slowly said to the crowd. His adversary was not a single person, and Wang Chong could not fight against an immense faction with only his own strength. This was also one of the reasons he had gathered these people here. King Song did not reply, instead taking up the strange symbol Wang Chong had drawn out and asking, "Wang Chong, you're sure that it's this symbol?" Everyone instantly focused on the ink symbol on the paper. Wang Chong nodded. The room instantly fell silent as everyone inspected the thin sheet of paper. The black symbol was extremely strange. At a glance, it seemed like a soaring bird. But if one looked carefully, it didn't seem like one at all. It was semi-drawing, semi-word. This old man has spent 40-some years out and about in the world, but I've never seen this symbol before. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have never even known that there was such a powerful faction in the Great Tang. Xianxia Jianxiong emotionally sighed as he gazed at the symbol. After a slight pause, he added, "But the more hidden this faction is, the greater its ambitions. I am also unable to help in this aspect," Wang Chong's little uncle Wang Mi said. He had the least status of all the people gathered here and was also one of the youngest. He truly knew little about things of this nature. But I'm confident that such a large faction, no matter what it does, will have left behind some clues, Wang Mi added. Wang Chong said nothing, only turned to the others. The room was silent as everyone pondered the symbol. "I actually do have a little impression of this symbol of yours," a voice suddenly said, immediately grabbing everyone's attention. "Elder Zhao." Wang Chong raised his head and gazed in surprise at Elder Yi and Elder Zhao. These two were both old subordinates of Duke Zhou. They were the oldest people here and probably the ones with the most experience. "Elder Yi, do you remember 40-some years ago, when the Sage Emperor had just ascended to the throne? Didn't he get a congratulatory gift from someone from the Confucian school?" As Elder Zhao spoke, he turned to Elder Yi next to him. This? Elder Yi was taken aback, not having expected Elder Zhao to bring up this matter from decades ago. Both of them had lived for many years, and there were many things that he could no longer remember very clearly. Did you forget? That person even ran into you. He left before the Sage Emperor's crowning ceremony was even finished, Elder Zhao reminded. Upon hearing this, Elder Yi raised an eyebrow, and his eyes flashed as if he had remembered something. I remember now. There really was someone from the Confucian school who went to have an audience with the Sage Emperor, and the Sage Emperor even met him alone in Taiha Palace. The ceremony even started 15 minutes later than the Bureau of Rites had expected, Elder Yi said. He truly didn't remember much about matters from so many decades ago, but it was hard to forget someone who had delayed something as important as the Sage Emperor's coronation and even left before it started. I remember that the gift offered by that Confucian to the Sage Emperor had this symbol, Elder Zhao said. Buzz. Wang Chong shivered upon hearing Elder Zhao's words. As far as he was aware, the Confucian sect had appeared after he had defeated Arabia. He had had no idea that they had appeared 40-some years ago and were even connected to the Sage Emperor. Elder Yi, are you sure? Were they really the same? King Song suddenly asked. Elder Zhao's words had also come as a great surprise to the other people in the room. I can't be wrong. After all, not many things could delay something as important as the Sage Emperor's coronation, Elder Zhao solemnly said. But I only saw it that one time. There was nothing else regarding those people after that. If Wang Chong hadn't mentioned it, I would have never even thought about that matter. The clue came to an end there, and the room fell silent once more. But this information from Elder Zhao was already an unexpected harvest. At this point, the hitherto silent academic Lu Ting spoke up. Actually, I think that the thing at the center of that ink symbol is a word. These words left even Wang Chong surprised. He had been the first to discover this symbol, but not even he had realized that there was a word at its center. In a flash, everyone examined the symbol once more. After focusing only on the center and disregarding the lines and patterns on the edges, now that Lu Ting had mentioned it, they really did feel that it was similar to a word. But if it was a word, it was a very bizarre one. However, Lu Ting was an erudite academic with a vast array of knowledge. He undoubtedly had his reasons for this conclusion. The form is rather similar to bird seal script, which is different from the characters we use today. It's an extremely old style of writing, one of the earliest in use. Very few people know about it now, much less understand it. I also only happened to see a few characters of bird seal script in an ancient text I was reading. As Lu Ting spoke, he rose, took a brush, walked up to the table, and began to write. But after only a few strokes of his brush, he stopped and raised the paper for everyone to see. At that moment, everyone could see strange images on the paper, half word and half drawing. Although they were all different from the ink symbol of the Confucian sect, they were 70 to 80% similar. I saw these characters in that ancient text, but I only know what they look like, not what they mean, Lu Ting said. It's much better now that we know that this is bird seal script. If we can find out the meaning of this word, perhaps we can learn something about the Confucian sect's background, Elder Yi commented. Academic Lu, you have extensive experience in this subject. You must know of someone who understands this script. I truly do know an old researcher who likes to collect bird seal script and various books about it. He has various books at his place, some of them more than 1,000 years old. When I was young, I always wanted to visit him and sent him many calling cards, but I never had the opportunity to meet him. The ancient book I read was one that I implored his servants to leave for me before he moved away. If that old gentleman is still alive, he would be nearly 90 now. Wang Chong, if you can find him, you might be able to find something, Lu Ting sternly said. That old gentleman had not been a part of the Confucian sect, but a person who purely loved books. More importantly, he had a reclusive personality and did not like interacting with others. Otherwise, Lu Ting would have gotten a meeting with him in his youth. It had been 20-some years since then, so no one knew if that old gentleman was still alive. Even Lu Ting felt that the hopes were minuscule. Academic Lu, what is the name of that gentleman? I will send people to look for him, Wang Chong said. Although the hopes were small, Wang Chong decided to try. The Central Plains was incredibly vast, and to find a single person, particularly one who didn't like crowds, was like trying to find a needle in an ocean. This was also one of the reasons Lu Ting found the hopes to be very minuscule. However, Wang Chong had gathered nearly 80% of the empire's great clans at his side, and the power of these factions was spread throughout the 9 provinces. If he borrowed their strength, he really did have a chance of finding that old researcher. When Cho Shu, Lu Ting said. The room fell silent once more. King Song suddenly broke the silence. In truth, if we want to know more about them, I have another method. Your Highness. King Song's words took everyone by surprise, and Wang Chong turned his head in shock. Although the Confucian sect was difficult to investigate, there was one person who was in the know. King Song's eyes blazed as he slowly scanned the crowd, and then he announced the answer, King Qi Liu. King Song had spent many years in the court and experienced many storms. Even Wang Chong had to feel some admiration for his intelligence. The Confucian sect can't have remained completely hidden. At the very least, King Qi knows the truth. Given his personality, he would never listen to their orders unless he knew their background and knew that they were worthy enough to work with him. Moreover, King Qi has always been proud and conceited. Between the Grand Preceptor, King Qi, the Prime Minister, and the First Prince, King Qi is the one least likely to restrain himself and keep a secret. Old butler, I'll leave this matter to you, King Song said without turning his head. This old slave understands. The old butler, wearing a black robe, respectfully bowed, his face devoid of emotion. Wang Chong saw this sight and breathed a long sigh of relief. King Song, his big uncle Lu Ting, Elder Zhao. Every one of these people here was extremely experienced and intelligent. This was precisely why Wang Chong had gathered all of them together. A single thread could not make a string. One tree did not make a forest. In order to contend against this unknown faction, he needed to bring all his allies together. And reality had proved that King Song and the others really could offer Wang Chong important help. Thunk, thunk, thunk. At this moment, anxious knocks thumped against the door. Who is it? King Song grimaced and turned his head. The mood in the hall instantly turned grim. Your Highness, there is a subordinate of the King of Foreign Lands at the gates saying that he has an urgent matter to report. A voice came from outside, belonging to King Song's chief guard. A few moments later, the doors opened, allowing a travel-worn old eagle to come inside. Milord, there's a problem. It's from Kunwu training camp. Old Eagle, his face solemn, got down on one knee and respectfully offered a letter to Wang Chong. Wang Chong opened the letter, which only had a few lines of words. The first matter it mentioned was that Wang Chong's instructor in Kunwu training camp, Xianxia, had been arrested. The second matter was that the Confucian school had formally advanced into the 3 great training camps. Bzzz. When Wang Chong saw this, he immediately paled and stood up. King Song, Big Uncle, Lord Zhangqiu, my other respected seniors, I have some matters to attend to and must take my leave first. Wang Chong quickly took his leave, passing through the main gate of the King Song residence and stepping into his carriage. When did these things happen? Wang Chong asked. Not too long ago. I've already sent men to investigate. Kunwu training camp isn't very far, so we should learn something very soon, Old Eagle respectfully said. Flap, flap. In the few moments they had been talking, a carrier pigeon flew into the carriage, bringing with it more information, but the situation was not good. The Confucian school's announcements throughout the capital vigorously promoting their achievements had only been the beginning. While Wang Chong was gathering up King Song and the others to uncover the secrets of the Confucian sect, Li Junxian had led the Confucian sect in quickly setting their eyes on their next target, the illustrious 3 great training camps of the Great Tang. Not too long ago, a momentous announcement had been made. A Confucian Hall of Righteousness was to be built in each of the 3 great training camps. Starting from now, besides training recruits in infantry, cavalry, and archery skills, as well as various strategies and tactics, the 3 great training camps would also add Confucian lessons to their curricula. If one did not pass a test of the Hall of Righteousness, One could not graduate from the 3 great training camps and thus would not be able to join any army of the Great Tang. And failing this test 3 times would cause one to be encouraged to withdraw from the 3 great training camps, denied any further study or training. Absurd! When Wang Chong saw this, he immediately crumpled the letter up in rage. The reason the 3 great training camps had been established was to raise generals, so their primary focus was the art of war. The kind did not command soldiers, and the nature of war was inextricably bound to killing. For the Confucian sect to set up halls of righteousness in the 3 great training camps and even require students to pass a standard examination was completely going against the initial goal of these camps. It was precisely because Xianxia, as an instructor of one of the training camps, could not agree with this proposal and forcefully fought against it that he was eventually arrested by the imperial court. My lord, the 3 great training camps were established by the sage emperor and have extraordinary status. Not even the army can approach it. How could they have such immense abilities that they could interfere with them and even issue such an absurd order? Old Eagle sternly said. The more he understood this Confucian sect, the more Old Eagle feared it. Their abilities seemed boundless and they seemed capable of interfering in anything or place. It must be related to the first prince. Wang Chong leaned against the carriage, his expression grave. The 3 great training camps are under the direct supervision of the sage emperor, and ordinary people are not allowed to meddle with them. But right now, the first prince is the regent. As long as they have his decrees, the Confucians can get in. Moreover, the Confucians only need to use the reason of cultivating both civil and martial to easily pass the decree to set up these Confucian halls. Although the incident had only just occurred and he was still lacking information, Wang Chong only need to think a little to guess at the crucial point. Swoosh! As he was speaking, another carrier pigeon flew in through the carriage window. At the same time, there was a light creak from the carriage as if someone else had gotten on. My lord, there's a problem. We've just received news that the imperial court has passed a decree banning the construction of any private buildings within 100 li of the 3 great training camps. All manors and pavilions must be dismantled. My lord, Deflecting Blade Manor is in trouble. Zhang Kei's voice came from outside, his voice getting softer as he reached the end of his message. Too much. Far too much. The problem of Su Hanshan and Li Sai in the northwest had still not been resolved, and now another storm was stirring in the 3 great training camps near the capital. Although he had no evidence, even a blind man could see that the Confucian sect was coming with a surging momentum at Wang Chong. The 3 great training camps were the foundation of the empire, and countless generals of the empire would emerge from those camps. Wang Chong's subordinates Chun Burang, Sun Jiming, Su Hanshan, and others had all emerged from Kunwu training camp, and Deflecting Blade Manor was Wang Chong's private land and gathering place where he brought together all the elite recruits of the 3 great training camps. Moreover, Wang Chong had used this opportunity to pass down his own strategies and tactics, using his own training methods to nurture these future generals of the empire. Deflecting Blade Manor was incredibly close to Kunwu training camp and was well within the range prescribed by the imperial court's order. There was no doubt that these orders were both targeted against Wang Chong. Winds would herald a coming storm, and the Confucian assault had come much faster and fiercer than expected. In addition, my lord, we've just received word that the Confucian school has sent many Confucians to the tea houses and restaurants of the capital to promulgate the concept of the harmonious world, even more than they did before, Zhang Kei added. The Qixi Protectorate Army, Deflecting Blade Manor, Kunwu Training Camp, Confucian lecturers, the Confucian assault was coming in one towering wave after another. Old Eagle and Zhang Kei both felt an immense pressure on their shoulders. Wang Chong said nothing, only slowly closed his eyes. The clopping of the horses came from outside, matching with the rhythm of Wang Chong's tapping finger. Stop! Wang Chong suddenly said. With this order, the carriage came to a stop with a neigh. This order was so sudden that both Old Eagle and Zhang Kei turned to the carriage interior in surprise. Everyone was quiet, allowing the sounds of the crowd and the rolling of other carriages to fill the air. Pass on my order, Wang Chong suddenly said a few moments later. In my name, Deflecting Blade Manor is to be gifted to Kunwu Training Camp to serve as an additional training ground and activity area for Kunwu training camp. His eyes slowly opened, revealing his determined and profound gaze. Ah! Old Eagle and Xianxia gasped, their bodies trembling and their expressions dazed. Deflecting Blade Manor was born of Wang Chong's sweat and blood, and he had poured so much time and energy into building it up. Many of his subordinate generals had arisen from that place. Moreover, during the Battle of Talas, these subordinates had swiftly revealed their incredible talent and capabilities. One could say that the students of the 3 great training camps that Wang Chong had gathered at Deflecting Blade Manor were the foundation of Wang Chong's efforts to alter the Great Tang army. Old Eagle and Xianxia had originally believed that Wang Chong would immediately head to Deflecting Blade Manor to fight the proposal. They hadn't expected that Wang Chong would choose to give Deflecting Blade Manor to Kunwu training camp. But the two of them had always firmly believed in Wang Chong and understood that he never made meaningless decisions. Ah! The first to gasp in realization was Old Eagle, while Xianxia seemed to have some inkling but had not fully grasped the idea yet. Understand yet? The Confucian sect is using the power of the first prince, and the first prince is using the power of the sage emperor. If we try and resist the attack of the Confucian sect this time, we'll be resisting the sage emperor. This cannot be allowed to happen. Moreover, the 3 great training camps were established according to the sage emperor's decree. The Confucian sect would have long ago prepared themselves for this before they started making trouble. Wang Chong calmly said, the image of that handsome and elegant white-robed Confucian once more emerging in his mind. The Confucian sect leader calling himself Li Junxian appeared to be only 26 or 27, but his attacks were swift and fierce and came in endless waves that gave his opponents no time to breathe. More importantly, he calculated everything and made meticulous plans, predicting almost every counter his opponent would make, leaving his foes very little room to maneuver. Although there was no direct confrontation and no sign of any swords or sabers, Wang Chong's opponent was far more ferocious than he had imagined. He had faced many opponents before, but none of them could compare to this Li Junxian. Rather than waiting for them to dismantle Deflecting Blade Manor, it would be better to just give it to Kunwu training camp. Although we can't bring things back to the way they were before, at least the Confucians won't be able to continue messing around with it. This also allows us to preserve as much of Deflecting Blade Manor as possible. Wang Chong said heavily. Your subordinate understands, Old Eagle solemnly said. When he saw Wang Chong's young and determined face, he felt sincere admiration. The Confucian sect's attack was furious, but Wang Chong had chosen to actively respond rather than passively react. Not even the Confucian sect could do anything about this, and their attack was thus nullified. Xianxia, help me get in touch with the Protector Generals and Great Generals on the border. Propose to them that the Bureau of Military Personnel should set up a commander base entirely for the border protectorates to train generals. All the examinees expelled from the 3 great training camps due to the Halls of Righteousness should be recruited by the commander base, and it should be guaranteed to all students who meet the standards that they will be transferred to the border protectorates upon completion of their study through the Bureau of Military Personnel. Wang Chong had a wise and profound look in his eyes as he gazed into the distance. In addition, write personal letters for me to Geshu Han and Sishun, Shenyu Zhongtong, Gao Xianji, and Zhang Shogui. Tell them that I will teach my art of war in this commander base. As long as they vigorously support this proposal and jointly sign on, at least 10% of the officers produced will be transferred to their armies. After seeing what I did in Talas and Karasin, I trust that they won't refuse. Once a decision had the approval of the 5 Protector Generals, the Bureau of Military Personnel, and Minister of War Zhangqiu Jianxiong, it could bypass the imperial household and still be formally approved. As long as Wang Chong was not establishing a personal army and all the soldiers were transferred to the border protectorates, not even the Confucian sect could do anything. As the string of orders left Wang Chong's lips, Old Eagle's and Xianxia's worried and uneasy faces immediately relaxed. No matter who this Li Junxian was or where this Confucian sect came from, they had truly picked the wrong opponent this time. Yes, your subordinate will do so, the two of them replied in unison. In addition, where is Zhao Chenxiu imprisoned? Wang Chong suddenly asked. There was an appropriate countermeasure for every measure. No matter what sort of plans Li Junxian had, none of them could pose a threat to him. The only thing Wang Chong was concerned about now was Zhao Qianxiu's safety. Zhao Qianxiu was Wang Chong's first and only instructor. Wang Chong had always had nothing but respect and admiration for him. Zhang Ke bowed and said, "My lord, we've already found his location." After being arrested, Lord Zhao Qianxiu was transferred back to the capital and sent to the penal court. Wang Chong blinked at this news. According to the laws of the imperial court, officers who committed crimes were sent to the Bureau of Military Personnel, while commoners who committed crimes were sent to the Bureau of Punishments. When the imperial court or imperial household became involved, criminals were sent to the Court of Judicial Review. Criminals that fell outside of these three categories were sent to the penal court, a place used to deal with special criminals. And the one who presided over the penal court was none other than King Qi. Upon mention of the penal court, some things immediately became obvious. "Let's go to the penal court," Wang Chong sternly said. The penal court was located by the northwest corner of the imperial palace. This place was remote, located in the least populated part of the capital. Moreover, the land also belonged to the imperial household, and ordinary people were forbidden from entering. Boom! There was a thunderous explosion, shock waves of energy, and countless screams as fully armored guards of the penal court were sent flying through the air like ragdolls. While still in the air, their armor and weapons were already blasted to pieces by stellar energy. Wang Chong led Old Eagle and Zhang Ke straight through the place with an unstoppable momentum. "This is the penal court. Halt!" Furious and shocked shouts rang through the air as the experts of the penal court converged from all directions. But despite the waves of experts, none of them were able to get within 30 feet of Wang Chong. Energy tore at them, sent them flying, or caused them to spin in the air and collide against each other. "Where is Zhao Qianxiu being held?" Wang Chong reached out a hand, and an expert of the penal court suddenly flew through the air and landed in Wang Chong's hand like a doll. His fingers tightly clenched around the expert's neck, raising him to the air like a bird. I won't tell you. His Highness King Qi has already been informed and will soon be here. You can't escape." The penal court expert's face was red and stricken with fear, but he refused to speak. "Humph, in front of me, it doesn't matter how tight-lipped you are." With a thought, Wang Chong sent a massive burst of psychic energy into the expert's mind. After encountering some weak resistance, Wang Chong's psychic energy plunged deep into the expert's mind. "Penal court, the 22nd cell," Wang Chong muttered, and then he threw the penal court expert into 10 some experts behind him, throwing them into disarray. Boom! Another wave of stellar energy swept out as Wang Chong blasted through hundreds of penal court experts to force his way into the underground prison. The underground prison of the penal court was dreadful and sinister. There were many disheveled prisoners kept here, and their bodies were covered in bruises, clearly indicating that they had been tortured. When Wang Chong saw this, he was even more infuriated. If King Qi's men had secretly tortured Zhao Qianxiu, he would never forgive them. "Lord Zhao." Zhang Ke and Old Eagle followed Wang Chong as he strode forward toward the 22nd cell. But when they found this cell, they were instantly struck dumb. "This!" The two of them stared speechlessly at the cell. Old Eagle, Zhang Ke. Wang Chong also saw the state of the 22nd cell, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes, his voice coming to a sudden stop. The cell was completely empty, devoid of any inhabitants. Impossible! This was Wang Chong's first reaction. Wang Chong had rushed over almost as soon as Zhao Qianxiu had been arrested, and he had obtained the location of the cell from the mind of a penal court expert. There was no way this information would be false. Check the other cells. See if he was moved elsewhere. Wang Chong immediately said. "Yes, my lord." Zhang Ke and Old Eagle immediately moved toward the other cells. Meanwhile, Wang Chong looked around and quickly noticed a prison guard who had recently been tossed aside. He quickly sent out a stream of psychic energy into this prison guard's mind. When he learned what the guard knew, his body trembled and his brow creased. However, the tension on his face relaxed. Zhao Qianxiu had been rescued by someone else. This was the information Wang Chong had obtained from the prison guard's mind. Not long before he had arrived, a black-robed person with exceptionally high status had appeared at the penal court and forcefully taken Xianxia from his cell. And based on the circumstances, it seemed like this person was not on friendly terms with King Qi, as the people of the penal court had attempted to stop them. What's going on here? Wang Chong fell silent, his mind confused. He had not expected this kind of situation. King Qi's way of doing things had always been unbridled and despotic, and his personality was brash and arrogant. Removing someone from his penal court was not something any ordinary person could do. More importantly, Wang Chong had known Zhao Qianxiu for a long time, but he had never heard anything about him knowing someone of such high status. Could that legend be true? Wang Chong's mind was currently whirring with thoughts. In truth, there was also a lot of gossip in the capital about Zhao Qianxiu. The most widespread rumor was that Zhao Qianxiu had some sort of backer, and the evidence for this was that Zhao Qianxiu didn't appear to have any sort of background or patron, yet he was the chief instructor of Kunwu training camp, placed above all the other instructors. Moreover, he was the only instructor in Kunwu training camp who taught the art of command. Lord Zhao, I truly underestimated you. It seems like you've got quite a few secrets around you. Wang Chong stared at the empty 22nd cell, a smile slowly creeping onto his lips. Xianxia, Old Eagle, there's no need to search. Let's go, Wang Chong suddenly said, upon which he turned and began to make his way out of the penal court. Ah! This abrupt order caused Xianxia and Old Eagle to glance at each other in dismay, but there was no time to think, and they ran to catch up. Moments after stepping out of the gloomy underground prison of the penal court, they immediately heard a voice suffused with rage roaring out from the distance. Wang Chong, you've lost all respect for laws and morals, daring to force your way into the penal court to take away a prisoner. Do you really think this king can't deal with you? Wang Chong raised his head and saw a sea of people outside the penal court, countless experts surrounding the place. And in the center of these people was King Qi in his imperial robe, a dour look on his face, charging forward and seething with killing intent. King Qi's face was twisted in rage, and if looks could kill, Wang Chong would be dead 1,000 times over. Wang Chong scanned the surroundings and saw that many more experts and soldiers were still gathering, all of them experts that King Qi had brought with him. Humph! Wang Chong only coldly snorted at this sight. With a sweep of his sleeve, he began to stride forward as if no one was there. On the battlefield, he would face thousands of soldiers. He truly cared little for the experts King Qi had brought. Who cares if I take away prisoners? When did it become your responsibility to arrest instructors of Kunwu training camp? Wang Chong coldly stared at King Qi as he fearlessly walked over. Bastard! King Qi's face was ashen and he was almost about to explode from rage. The penal court was his personal territory, and Wang Chong's actions were clearly a naked challenge. Bastard thing! You're only a king by a different surname without even a drop of imperial blood in your veins. Do you really think that you can sit on the same level as me? Since you've come to this penal court, don't think about leaving so easily. King Qi, a gloomy look on his face, waved his hand, and immediately, the experts behind him shot forward, energy erupting from their bodies like lava from a volcano, all of them locking onto Wang Chong. If you want to deal with me, you need to know your own strength. Wang Chong's body exploded with boundless waves of energy, and in a chorus of grunts, all the experts behind King Qi staggered backward. You're seeking death. King Qi clenched his teeth in rage. He stomped forward, sending out a grandiose wave of azure energy shooting into the sky. His aura began to rapidly climb, swiftly ascending into the Saint Martial realm and then to the peak. After reaching the Great General level, it continued to rise, immediately taking him to the level of a peak Great General, and this was still not the end. The strength King Qi displayed at this moment was enough to place him on par with Abu Muslim. Old Eagle and Xianxia were both stunned by this sight. Everyone knew that King Qi was arrogant and tyrannical, flaunting his high status, but both of them had never known King Qi to have such a high cultivation level. The cultivation level he revealed here was enough to place him amongst the best experts in the world. Bzzz. Everything for several li around the penal court began to shake, and a moment later, bang! King Qi stepped forward, and then he was shooting toward Wang Chong like a roaring dragon, leaving countless afterimages behind him. Ignorant thing, this king will tear you to pieces. King Qi's bellows resounded throughout the penal court. Rah! An ancient howl that desired blood and destruction suddenly exploded in everyone's ears, and a moment later, a giant beast the size of a mountain with blue-black fur and savage fangs appeared behind King Qi, its eyes hungering for destruction. All this filled everyone with deep dread. A chaos beast. This was a legendary creature that had lived in the Central Plains in the long-distant past. The imperial palace had countless secret martial arts manuals, and King Qi, as a member of the imperial household, had access to 80% of these ancient books. This supreme art, which had extracted the essence of the ancient chaos beast, was clearly an ancient and formidable technique that King Qi cultivated. Not knowing your own strength, the sight of King Qi charging forward like a comet, shrouded in astonishing power, only elicited a sneer from Wang Chong. King Qi truly was one of the top-class experts of the era. Not only did he have high status and great ambitions, he also possessed incredible strength and cultivation. Alas, although King Qi was powerful, he was only increasing his strength. He had yet to touch upon the subtle realm. Boom! Wang Chong stepped forward, and the earth quaked as he shot forward like a cannonball. In a thunderous collision, he crashed into King Qi at the point where the energy around King Qi was the weakest. Great Yin Yang art! A voice resounded through the penal court like a peal of thunder. As everyone looked up to the sky, they all felt like they were seeing things. A sun and moon had seemingly appeared in the sky. Boom! After what seemed like a second and like countless eons, an enormous explosion swept through the world. Aya! A moment later, a figure crashed down like a meteor into the grounds of the penal court. The ground instantly gave way into a giant crater, while tens of thousands of bits of rock sprayed into the air along with clouds of roiling dust. King Qi! Your Highness! Your Highness! King Qi's impact threw the crowd of experts in front of the penal court into complete disarray, and countless people cried out in shock as they rushed toward the site of the impact, their faces stricken with panic. This contest of strength had begun quickly and ended even more quickly. In just one round, King Qi had been utterly defeated. Humph! Floating in the air, Wang Chong slowly spiraled to the ground like a drifting leaf. King Qi had not yet reached the subtle realm, and he probably hadn't even heard the term subtle realm before. If he thought to overcome Wang Chong with pure strength, then he was simply dreaming. Tap! Wang Chong gracefully landed on the ground. He didn't even seem to be breathing very hard. It was obvious that he had not used his full strength. Let's go! Not even glancing at where King Qi had fallen, Wang Chong led Old Eagle and Xianxia out, his eyes suffused with cold light. "My lord!" Old Eagle and Xianxia followed behind, elated by what had just occurred. King Qi had opposed Wang Chong in every corner, and now that he had been defeated and stripped of all his dignity, they were finally able to achieve a sort of catharsis. "Wang Chong, this king will kill you." Wang Chong had barely walked 2 steps when a heaven-shaking roar suffused with endless killing intent erupted in his ears. Boom! In an explosion of dust, a figure shot forward and barred Wang Chong's path, wave after wave of killing intent rising from it. King Qi's body was covered in wounds and his face was battered and bruised, but his eyes were fixed on Wang Chong and contained a killing intent that was almost tangible. "Everyone, get up there. Kill this brat." King Qi had a ruthless expression. As a member of the imperial household, King Qi had always possessed a noble and revered status. He couldn't remember a time in his life when people did not treat him with the utmost respect, all except for Wang Chong and the Wang clan, who continuously ruined his plans and made an enemy of him. And there was certainly no one like Wang Chong, who dared to openly challenge him, forcing his way into the penal court and even attacking him in full view of the public. This was an unprecedented humiliation, and King Qi felt like he was about to explode from rage. "Wang Chong, I'll have you killed today." Loathing exploded out of King Qi's eyes. Following his order, the experts of the penal court joined together with the experts King Qi had brought with him and swept toward Wang Chong like a storm. "Stop!" At this moment, A furious roar exploded through the air. The earth rumbled and dust roiled as countless soldiers converged on the penal court. King Qi was left dazed by this sight, and he subconsciously turned around to see what was happening. Meanwhile, Wang Chong squinted as he glanced over in surprise, upon which he immediately spotted a familiar figure. It's him. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but be startled by this person's appearance. He had never imagined that the leader of the officials, the ever-busy Prime Minister Li Linfu, would suddenly appear here with all the officials, along with the soldiers of the Bureau of Revenue, Bureau of Military Personnel, and the City Guard. King Qi, King of Foreign Lands, both of you are noble kings of the Great Tang, meant to shine brilliantly over the empire like suns. Yet you brawl in the penal court. What nonsense is this? Li Linfu was wearing the scarlet robe of a rank 1 official and riding a black stallion. Even as he was riding over, his mouth was already spitting rebukes, a look of embarrassed resentment on his face. 20-some officials behind him were constantly looking back and forth between Wang Chong and King Qi, strange looks on their faces. It was truly a first for two kings of the Great Tang to engage in open hostilities in the capital. If I didn't promptly come over with the officials, who knows how much more trouble you would have caused? Bastard things! Why haven't you dispersed yet? Surprisingly, these final words were aimed at the experts of the penal court and the reinforcements King Qi had brought. King Qi hatefully glared at Wang Chong, his face alternating between green and white in his fury. But no matter how unwilling he was, with the Prime Minister and so many officials watching, he was forced to drop this quarrel. Whoosh! King Qi gave the order, and all his men scattered. Wang Chong, however, his eyes squinted, shot a contemplative glance at Li Linfu and King Qi. Rumble! Suddenly, the earth rumbled as yet another group arrived on the scene. The first prince has arrived. Bzzz. Wang Chong's mind trembled as he turned to look. In the distance, he spotted two massive dragon banners snapping in the wind, and behind those banners were countless soldiers of the Imperial Army and even the personal guards of the Emperor, the Golden Guards. They were marching in orderly ranks toward the penal court. And one could also see a majestic and noble figure being escorted by these Imperial Guards. The first prince. Wang Chong immediately spotted this familiar figure amidst the sea of soldiers. With the sage emperor having withdrawn into the palace, the first prince was serving as regent and represented the emperor. But this was the first time Wang Chong had ever seen the first prince outside of the imperial palace. In the span of a single day, the small penal court had gathered together three influential figures of the court: the Prime Minister, the first prince, and King Qi. In a flash, Wang Chong's heart sank and he immediately had an ill foreboding. Putting aside King Qi, the Prime Minister and the first prince had clearly come prepared. As expected, a moment later, Wang Chong heard the first prince speak. Wang Chong, you are quite bold to dare to wound imperial uncle. Have you become so accustomed to the battlefield that you're even treating a place like this as one? With his first words, the first prince looked past King Qi and locked his eyes on Wang Chong. The first prince's horse leapt out from the soldiers of the imperial army and trotted over to the penal court. Paying respects to the first prince, everyone began to get off their horses and bow, even Prime Minister Li Linfu. Your Highness, you came at just the right time. The King of Foreign Lands forced his way into the penal court to seize a prisoner from within, even wounding the guards of the penal court in the process. He clearly has no regard for the laws of this country and no respect for what is moral and right. First Prince, please act on behalf of this king. King Qi suddenly took on a new face when facing the first prince, immediately walking up to him and pointing a figure at Wang Chong, adopting the pose of a victim. In a flash, all the officials, Prime Minister Li Linfu, and the first prince all stared at Wang Chong. The entire penal court was silent as an invisible pressure descended. Bastards! These people are working together to make trouble for His Highness. Old Eagle and Zhang Ke immediately saw what was going on. This was clearly a scheme to deal with Wang Chong. The first prince was regent, Li Linfu was prime minister, and King Qi was a king. The power formed by the three joining together would be incredibly difficult to stop. Ha! Wang Chong's robes flapped in the wind. After understanding his foe's plans, Wang Chong still remained calm and fearless. First Prince and Lord Prime Minister have truly come at just the right time. This king only just arrived, yet milords arrived so promptly. And your highness the First Prince is truly perceptive. This king and King Qi were standing together. But your highness was immediately able to determine that this king was at fault and King Qi was unrelated. Wang Chong smiled. These words immediately caused the trio to grimace. The First Prince was particularly taken aback. He had originally believed that at this stage, Wang Chong would concede at least a little ground, but he was unexpectedly as tough and stubborn as ever. And Wang Chong had already exposed them. Impudent! A few moments later, the First Prince felt a surge of rage. It was one thing if Wang Chong was too proud to join him, but he had actually chosen to side with the Fifth Prince. He simply could not permit this sort of failure to appreciate his kindness. Wang Chong, your meaning is that this prince is unjustly accusing you? King Qi used this opportunity to fire off a rebuke. Wang Chong, it seems to me that after your victory at Cultivation, you have no regard for anyone else and have forgotten how high the heavens are. His Highness the First Prince is the eldest son and also the regent, the representative for the sage emperor when His Majesty is not present. Is this how you speak to the First Prince? Wang Chong's presence at the penal court was a hard fact, and he would find it incredibly difficult to escape responsibility for his crimes. Haha, I'm just judging the matter on its own merits, nothing more. And the penal court is not some forbidden ground of the imperial palace. As a king of the great Tang, can this king not even approach this trifling place? Wang Chong held his heads behind his back, not yielding one bit to the trio. Moreover, King Qi, since you have said to His Highness that I forced myself into the penal court to take away a prisoner, let this king ask you, where is that prisoner that I am taking away? Wang Chong swept his eyes over the trio. Li Linfu, the First Prince, and King Qi instantly paled. According to their plans, Wang Chong should have been bringing Xianxia out of the penal court at this time, but for some reason, there were only the two subordinates who frequently appeared with Wang Chong at his side. There was no sign of Xianxia, completely different from what they had predicted. The First Prince and Li Linfu instantly turned to King Qi. Damn it! King Qi mentally cursed, instantly speechless. The First Prince and Li Linfu were waiting for his answer, but he had only just arrived at the penal court himself and knew little about the situation. And if they did not have anything to incriminate Wang Chong, they could not accuse him of any crime. Wang Chong was so fearless precisely because he had seen this. Foul brat! This king won't forgive you. King Qi silently cursed, but he could only hold his rage in. Bastard! Is it also an unjust accusation that you have injured my men? An ashamed and furious King Qi yelled. This king only hoped to take a look around the penal court, but they tried in every way to stop me, treating this king like a prisoner, so this king naturally cannot be blamed for his actions. However, this king was the first to make a mistake. Old Eagle Xianxia, in a little while, send some gold and silver to the penal court to pay for their treatment. Bastard! King Qi's nose almost went crooked from his rage at hearing Wang Chong's words. Wang Chong's argument was simply impregnable, and he was helpless to do anything about it. Behind him, the shrewd Li Linfu remained emotionless. The First Prince, however, was finding it difficult to conceal the shock in his eyes. Simply intruding upon the penal court was not enough to assign any crime to Wang Chong. Moreover, they had brought many officials to support King Qi for this operation. If they could not pin a crime on Wang Chong, they would become the laughingstock of the court, which would have an enormous effect on his reputation amongst the officials. Moreover, King Qi, I see that your face is bruised and your body is covered in wounds. You're not going to blame me for doing that to you, right? Wang Chong turned to King Qi and smirked. Whoosh! King Qi's face instantly swelled in anger. Wang Chong was clearly jeering him in front of the crowd, but even though King Qi wanted nothing more than to kill Wang Chong right now, in front of these gathered officials, he could never confirm Wang Chong's claim, even if it really could be used against Wang Chong. Wang Chong, you rarely flatter yourself like this. With just your cultivation, you think that you can deal with this king. King Qi resentfully spat, his face pale. Old Eagle and Xianxia found it hard to repress their laughter. Their king's move this time had truly been masterful. Someone as proud and conceited as King Qi would never be able to admit such a thing. Even if he had lost a tooth, he would just swallow it down with his blood. Wang Chong also couldn't help but quietly chuckle to himself. That's good then. I had feared that I had actually injured your highness with my lack of caution. King Qi's face became as dark as the bottom of a pot, but he could not do a single thing about it. At this moment, the rumbling of hooves could be heard as another group arrived, coming from a different direction than Li Linfu or the first prince. The first prince, Li Linfu, and King Qi turned their heads in surprise. All their men were here, so it was clearly the men of a different faction who were approaching. His Highness King Song has arrived. A shout rang through the air, and then everyone spotted an opulent carriage emerging from that crowd of people and heading this way. From the symbol on the carriage and how it was decorated, one could see that it was none other than King Song's carriage. A few moments later, another shout rang out. Minister of War Zhangqiu Jianxiong has arrived. These shouts caused the trio to grimace. No one had expected King Song and Zhangqiu Jianxiong to arrive at this time. On the other end, Old Eagle and Xianxia couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The three of them had come to the penal court completely unprepared. The penal court was King Qi's territory, so the three of them had informed King Song only after they had left. This had been a decision made to guard against any mishaps, and it now appeared to be a correct one. With King Song and Zhangqiu Jianxiong present, the first prince and Li Linfu would at least be a little more restrained and would not be able to flagrantly act against Wang Chong. A few moments later, King Song and Zhangqiu Jianxiong stepped forward. Paying respects to your highness. Both of them began to rush toward the first prince. Imperial uncle, there is no need for such courtesy. The first prince waved his hand, his expression outwardly calm but his mind silently cursing. With the appearance of these two, the first prince had no choice except to give up. All three regents were here, so any further conflict would only further the ridicule. King Song tidied his robes and then strode forward. Only after bowing to the first prince did he voice his question. This king heard in his residence that your highness brought the officials to the penal court and that even Lord Prime Minister had gone. Did something happen? The first prince appeared natural and at ease atop his stallion, but inwardly, he was somewhat embarrassed. At this point, Prime Minister Li Linfu finally spoke in that deep and mellow voice of his sleeves flapping in the wind. Hey, your highness King Song has misunderstood. His highness originally had a matter of state to discuss with King Qi, and when he heard that King Qi was at the penal court, he decided to come and meet him. These words smoothly covered for the first prince. Right, your highness, were you not gathering the officials to discuss the matter of the Fu prefecture? Let us set off now, and King Qi can follow us at his leisure, Li Linfu said. After being reminded by Li Linfu, the first prince immediately had a realization. Lord Prime Minister is right. Imperial uncle, we will leave first. You may come at a later time. With these words, the first prince pulled on the reins of his horse and rode away. Your highness King Song, I will leave first with the first prince then, Li Linfu genially said, a warm smile on his face. With a sweep of his sleeve, he walked past King Song and away. King Song gazed in apprehension at their backs. Then he turned back to Wang Chong and softly sighed in relief. He and Zhangqiu Jianxiong had learned the news a little late, and the first prince and Li Linfu had arrived far before they had. Thankfully, nothing had happened to Wang Chong. King Qi, your injuries do not seem light. You should go back and rest up. This king has other matters and will take his leave first. Wang Chong shot a glance at King Qi before walking off toward King Song. Behind him, King Qi was trembling in rage, his face frighteningly dark. Everyone boarded King Song's carriage and departed from the penal court. Once King Song, Wang Chong, and Zhangqiu Jianxiong were all seated in the carriage, King Song spoke up. How is it? Are you okay? I'm fine. Wang Chong shook his head. It's not that easy for King Qi to deal with me. This matter truly is rather strange. It's fine if King Qi came when you forced your way into the penal court. After all, that is his territory. However, even the first prince and the prime minister came. This was no small matter. Fortunately, you were incredibly quick-witted and didn't leave them anything that they could use, King Song said. True. The first prince and Li Linfu clearly had a plan when they came. When King Song and I were coming, we had broken out in a cold sweat, Xianxia Jianxiong added. Upon learning that the first prince and the prime minister had both appeared at the penal court, even Xianxia Jianxiong was left dumbstruck. This was also why he had rushed over with King Song. This matter isn't that simple. Wang Chong's reaction was much calmer and more cool-headed. The arrival of King Qi, the first prince, and the prime minister is entirely linked to the arrest of Zhao Qianxiu and the development in the 3 great training camps. They arrived soon after I came to the penal court, which can't be a coincidence. It seems more like the result of someone's meticulous plan. King Qi doesn't have this sort of ability, while the prime minister is smooth and furtive and would never so easily reveal his abilities. He does have the power, but it definitely can't be him this time. As for the first prince, that's even more impossible. Wang Chong's eyes shone with a profound light, and he seemed to be able to stare into the depths of space-time. So, Wang Chong, you're saying that this was the work of the Confucian sect and that young man called Li Junxian? King Song immediately understood what Wang Chong was saying. He's the only possibility. Wang Chong firmly nodded. Only this could explain everything. Although his adversary was still young, he was the strongest opponent Wang Chong had ever encountered. His attacks came in wave after wave, giving him no chance to breathe. Buzz! King Song and Xianxia Jianxiong exchanged a glance, their hearts sinking. After bidding farewell to King Song and Xianxia Jianxiong, Wang Chong disembarked from the carriage and returned home. Flap, flap. As Wang Chong was making his way back to his home, a carrier pigeon flew through the sky and landed in a restaurant in the western part of the capital. All 3 floors of this restaurant were quiet and secluded. West Wind Pavilion valued the elegance and refreshment one felt when admiring the landscape. Here, one could enjoy the view of the plum blossom trees planted along the river. Every day, many scholars and literati would gather here to drink wine while admiring the plum blossoms. But at this moment, West Wind Pavilion was deserted, utterly silent. From the main gate hung a placard that only said, "Closed." But at this moment, a white-robed young man was sitting on the 3rd floor, drinking wine and enjoying the plum blossoms alone. All of West Wind Pavilion had been closed for today precisely to serve this honored guest. Flap, flap, the carrier pigeon landed on the table. A hand that had been waiting for some time now took the letter and sent the pigeon on its way. Young master, we failed at the penal court. Wang Chong returned safe and sound. A voice came from the bowed figure at the side. This man respectfully offered the letter with both hands. Is that so? Li Junxian grinned and lightly sipped a cup of fragrant wine, his expression exuding indescribable grace and ease. As expected, we still can't get a grip on him. This isn't the only problem. We just learned that the King of Foreign Lands has just sent a memorial to the Imperial Court formally gifting Deflecting Blade Manor to Kunwu Training Camp. However, he also appointed the manager for Deflecting Blade Manor. As expected, it was a member of Deflecting Blade Manor. In addition, we have also learned that the King of Foreign Lands has apparently written letters to all the great generals on the border and the Bureau of Military Personnel. In the name of the border protectorates, they plan to jointly form with the Bureau of Military Personnel a commander base that will be independent of the 3 great training camps. We were only able to intervene in the 3 great training camps through our connection with the First Prince and the Imperial household. If this commander base is established, it will be a faction entirely under the control of the militarists, and we will have no hope of intervening in it. Moreover, those protector generals on the border all have enormous influence. This commander base will probably have a reputation equal to the 3 great training camps. If this is allowed to take place, all our efforts will have been for nothing, the Confucian sect expert sternly said, his voice suffused with worry. It had been centuries since the Confucian sect had last encountered such a troublesome opponent. This was clearly a teenager, but his way of doing things was like that of a seasoned veteran. He was able to counter every move the Confucian sect made and minimize its effects. Upon hearing these last words, Li Juanxian's right hand, gripping the white porcelain cup, slightly paused, and his brow finally creased. The penal court incident had not been important. It would have been fine if they could imprison Wang Chong. But if they didn't, it wouldn't have too much effect. But if this commander base was established, everything would be completely different. The militarists and Confucians were irreconcilable. One was pro-war while the other was anti-war. At the very least, in the current situation, he could not allow the militarists to expand any further. There's no need to worry. I have a plan to deal with this matter. Li Juanxian's brow quickly relaxed and he soon calmed down. Those clear and limpid eyes looked forward, apparently imbued with boundless intelligence. Since the king of foreign lands has taken countermeasures, we'll set him aside for now. When the time comes, I will personally deal with him. Let me ask, are the preparations for that matter ready? Young master, everything is ready and awaiting your orders. As long as we complete this phase, we will take a large stride forward in our objectives. And young master's reputation is certain to shake the world. Young master will become a meritorious contributor to our Confucian sect. The expert's voice was brimming with admiration for Li Juanxian. An endless stream of Confucians had attempted to realize the true harmonious world. But in the end, they could only die with regret. Only under Li Juanxian's command had they taken great strides forward and gotten much closer to their goal. Get ready. In a few days, I will make a journey to the Western Turks to complete the final phase, Li Juanxian said. Yes, young master, the Confucian sect expert said. Ding. Li Juanxian placed the white porcelain cup on the table. As he gazed at the cup, Li Juanxian appeared to realize something. A hint of sorrow appearing in his eyes, but it quickly faded away. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew through, and when it was gone, the two figures in West Wind Pavilion had vanished with it. Whoosh! A carrier pigeon flew into the Wang family residence. The capital appeared calm on the surface, but a silent battle was taking place in the shadows. Wang Chong received the carrier pigeon and slowly removed the letter from its leg. Wang Chong glanced at the letter and immediately sighed in relief. This letter was from the northwest and had the personal seal of Anxi Protector General Gao Shenji. Wang Chong's earlier letter had proved useful. Upon learning that Su Hanshan and Li Sai had been arrested, Gao Shenji had taken Chang Qianli and the other high-ranking officers of the Anxi Protectorate Army and had personally gone to Qixi to find out what was going on. Li Sai and Su Hanshan had fought together with the Anxi Protectorate Army at the Battle of Talas, and they were allies whose bonds had been forged in the peril of battle. One could say that if they had not risked their lives on the battlefield, the Anxi Protectorate Army would already be gone. Moreover, the two of them had rendered enormous merit in the battle against the Arabs. It was absurd to the extreme that they had been arrested over such a trifling matter. This was the first time Gao Shenji had ever been so angry. Even without Wang Chong's request, he would have still intervened. Not only that, while Gao Shenji was heading over to Qixi, Geshuhan had also sent a letter saying that he would arrive in Qixi in a few days. The two great generals of the Great Tang had come with a furious momentum, and their enormous prestige and influence in the army proved effective. Pressured by the two great generals, the three Confucian commanders were forced to guarantee that no harm would be done to Li Sai and Su Hanshan. Moreover, in order to prove their sincerity, they agreed to have subordinates of Gao Shenji and Geshuhan stand as supervisors until the judgment from the imperial court arrived. There's simply no need for Su Hanshan and Li Sai to remain imprisoned. This is clearly a delaying tactic. Just what are these people up to? Wang Chong muttered to himself after putting away the letter. Wang Chong was almost certain that while Li Juanxian and the Confucian sect appeared to be targeting Su Hanshan and Li Sai, they were actually targeting him. But no matter what sort of idea Li Juanxian had, Wang Chong remained fearless, confident that he could counter. "My lord!" At this moment, Old Eagle rushed inside. "We just received word. One of the clans that we work with, the Li clan of Jing Prefecture, says that they found a trace of Wen Choshu.